Now that we know the reproductive parts of the flower, let us see how the process of pollination takes place. The pollen grain is the male germ cell which is present on the anther. What is the anther? The anther is the terminal end of the stamen. This pollen grain will now be transferred to the tip of the carpel. What is this tip called? The stigma, that's right. Won't this pollen grain be carried away by the wind? No, it does not. Can you tell me why? We studied that the stigma has a sticky substance which helps the pollen grain to stick to the stigma. Now let us look at the carpel of the flower. What are the parts you know about this carpel? This is the ovary, the style is the elongated tube, and the tip is called the stigma. Now let us look closely at the ovary. The ovary has an ovule within it. This ovule is called the female egg cell or the female germ cell. What happens when a pollen grain is in contact with the stigma? It will grow a tube which will move through the style. The tube will then carry the male germ cell which is released from the pollen. Thus the tube transports it and carries it to the ovary. What happens after this? The male germ cell will then fuse with the ovule and thus fertilization will take place. Do you know what will this fertilization give rise to? It will give rise to a zygote. A fusion of the male and the female gamete gives rise to a zygote. In time, this zygote will form an embryo while the ovule begins to gradually form a thick seed coat. What happens to the ovary? The ovary, as it matures, begins to form the fruit, and the remaining parts of the flower now begin to die. The flower withers away, and now in its place, a fruit is formed. The seed which is now enclosed within the fruit has the ability to reproduce and will form a new plant. How is this possible? It is pretty simple, because when the seed will fall on the ground, it will germinate, and this germinated seed will give rise to a new plant. Isn't this mechanism of nature a wonder in itself? Now you know how all the flowers disappear and you find fruits on that same tree in their place. In our next lesson, we will study the sexual method of reproduction in humans. Do watch our next video.